Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. Welcome everyone who's on the call today for this month's Ceolytics webinar. My name is Hemant Gangaram. I'm the Senior Manager BI and Data Governance at First Tech Credit Union and also the Community Chairperson at Ceolytics. It's my great pleasure to be hosting today's webinar. And before we start, a few things I wanted to inform the audience here, just reminding you that we're just about shy of 3 weeks away from the 2018 Ceolytics Credit Union Analytics Summit, the largest in North America, which is on March 13th to March 15th. The first 2 days. They're exceptional, and what we have done is also added a third day, which is a hands-on workshop, especially for folks who want to get started on analytics, learn more about applied data science or machine learning, as well as building innovation capacities in your organization. This is conducted by various experts in the industry. That's on the third day of the summit. Check out the full agenda if you are not registered yet. The site is ceolytics.com and click on the 2018 summit on the top of the page. Hope to see many of you here on the call join there as well and see you in person. Just a few housekeeping things for the webinar today. So folks who are on call, I've muted everybody at this point, but in case if you're not, please ensure that your calls or your phones are muted at this point during the presentation. And in case you have any questions, you can always post it through the chat session that's there on the screen, so that we can address those questions to the speaker at the end of the hour. While the session is getting recorded, we'll also post this recording on the YouTube channel for Ceolytics. And if you want to relook at it or share it within your organization, you'll be able to do that. So with that, housekeeping items aside, just quickly about today's featured presentation. The topic is transforming the credit union industry, collaborative analytics, or as Austin would say, I think, making the data work for you. So our key speaker is Austin Wentzlaff, who joined on Approach in 2013 as a business development analyst and is now currently heading the Vice President of Business Development. He's responsible for developing marketing strategies, driving prospects to contract award, as well as building and maintaining high-level relationships with the current and prospective clients, as well as strategic partners, and elaborating business development plans that help support the business growth. Austin is an alumnus of Gustavus Adolphus College in St. Peter, Minnesota. He's also graduated from there with a BA in financial economics. Austin also has been writing extensively on topics of big data and analytics and financial technology, fintech-related topics on the company On Approach blog site, as well as a few other industry trade publications. So I would like to warmly welcome Austin and look forward to hearing from his topic on collaborative analytics.
All right. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks to the Ceolytics team for having me present today. As we just talked about, I'll be talking a lot about collaboration, and that's something that we really appreciate with the whole Ceolytics initiative. Is really about making this an industry opportunity, industry initiative, which is that data and analytics piece of it. Before it was really let's work on our own independently and try to figure out at the individual credit union level. So we're very excited with what the CU Analytics Summit and Ceolytics online user group has brought to the credit union space. And I'll talk a little bit about how we've brought in collaboration in a different light to the credit union space today as I go through my presentation as well. So just to get started, I know I can't poll you guys like I could in live audience if you guys are standing in front of me, but just take a moment to think about what your guys' budget for analytics is today. What are you budgeting today for 2018? How about 2019, 2020, going forward into the future? And the reason I wanted to ask this question is because of this big number that's on the screen today, $100 million. And this is actually what one of the big four budgeted last year. So one of the big four banks came out with a $100 million budget just for analytics. We're not talking about anything else that institution is doing, just spending money on analytics. And this is really why we want to talk about collaboration in the industry, because there's no way one credit union can come up with a $100 million budget. That's just unobtainable for us. But as an industry working as one, this number becomes a little bit smaller. It doesn't seem as scary when we're talking about multiple credit unions coming together to collaborate on it. So just to give you guys a few takeaways of what we'll be talking about today, one is reinvention. So basically, what does it mean to look at your credit union and say, what do we need to do differently? How should we be thinking about the future? And that kind of falls into this catchword or this buzzword that a lot of people have been referring to, which is digital transformation. And one of the things that we've been working with too is a company called CU 2.0. Kirk Drake with Ongoing Operations actually authored a book called CU 2.0. It's about this exact topic. What should you be doing to transform yourself digitally and think about what's next versus staying there and being kind of static and waiting for other things to happen. And then I'll talk a little bit about the challenges that credit unions are facing when it comes to data and analytics. Why is it so hard for us to compete with some of the other players out there in the industry? And then the opportunity, obviously I've talked about it a couple of times already, but collaboration is really what we're going to be talking about, is the opportunity scattered out the credit union in a multiple array of different systems, different data definitions, different ways of defining things like a member. So we just have all these different disparate data silos, and they don't talk to each other, they don't tie out, they're not validated. And what we've been trying to do for years is really make sense of that data using Excel. And I like to refer to that as Excel hell, where we've basically been trying to shove every piece of data we possibly can into Excel and make it work. But it's just not what Excel was designed to do. Excel has its own purposes. It's a very good tool, but not a data integration and analytics tool, to the extent that we're talking about in the credit union space. And another one of the challenges that we're seeing that we're kind of fearful for the credit union space with this challenge, there's two real reasons we don't want credit unions to be outsourcing their analytics. One of which is security. When you send your data out, you have to really be worried about the security aspect of it. So we want the credit unions to keep as much data in-house as possible. But we also know that there are going to be things that require you to send data out. And I'll talk a little bit about our data lake that we're standing up as well, where that comes into play. But the other piece that we want to make you aware of is the monetization value of your data. If you start giving away your data to other third parties, what you're actually doing is letting them monetize your data on your behalf. So we've built our solution as a QSO to really keep that data value within the industry. So it's a credit union data lake that's owned by credit unions, and we keep that value in there. So that's one thing that we really want to make clear, is that anytime you send something out, you're putting yourself up for more risk, and you're also giving away value that you could retain on your own. I think every credit union that's listening today will be very familiar with this, but the lack of resources is also as another area where we've struggled with. And that's not only just on data warehousing and data analytics and predictive modeling and all that stuff, but any technology initiative that we do, it's constantly a battle of getting the right resources or having them work on our project at the right time. So that's just something that we're always going to deal with. But from a technology perspective, and kind of going along the lines of that resource constraint, what do you all need to get to the top of that curve that I showed you earlier? Well, step one is really your enterprise data warehouse. And you can call that what you want it. You can call it an enterprise data warehouse, a data model, data integration middleware, really whatever you want to call it. It all leads back to the same thing, which is establishing a single source of truth for the credit union. So I have one spot to get all of my answers from a data perspective. So if I have a question, I go to one spot. I'm not running around to 10 different systems trying to make sense of my data because it doesn't match up. So we actually call ours a data platform, just because that every credit union that uses our solution is on the exact same platform. All of their data standards match up so we can start to work together, and that's where that collaborative piece comes into play. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. But basically, the enterprise data warehouse, that's really the foundational piece of analytics. I think a lot of people really get excited about dashboarding, predictive modeling, and all of that stuff, which is great. That is the fun part of it. But the most crucial piece is figuring out your data first. You have to have good, clean data, in a way that's easy to use. Otherwise, if you don't have good data that's right, you're never going to trust what comes out of it. You're going to have multiple different departments coming with different answers, and it's just going to be a mess. And then from a business intelligence perspective is kind of the next step up, which you're able to actually do things like dashboarding, report writing, trending analysis, all of that stuff. It's more of your backward-looking questions, looking at what has happened rather than what we should be doing, which is really the next piece, which is predictive analytics. And this is where we see a lot of the value add. There's a tremendous amount of value in being able to take past historical behaviors or transactions and be able to extrapolate that into the future. So, things like next best product models, what is the next best product for a specific member, probability of attrition, which members are going to leave the credit union, probability of default, obviously another good example. CECL, CECL is actually a predictive model at its core. You're doing ALLL forecasting down to the loan level, so being able to forecast or predict, what your losses are going to be at a loan level is actually a predictive model that requires some predictive analysis behind it. And then obviously there's the expertise piece of it. And I just talked about that in the last slide, but that's been a problem for credit unions is that, we don't always have all these resources. You're talking about data architects, ETL developers, database analysts, report writers or business intelligence developers, data scientists. All of these resources aren't typically credit union resources that are on staff. So it's going out there and hiring a whole bunch of new resources. And that's just to kind of get started. Then you also have to think about maintaining it, making changes as they come up, learning new things like machine learning, getting into AI, which, we're starting to do with our data lake. But that's kind of the burden that the credit union would face if they had to go at it on their own. And that really, my slide will advance. And those are some of the costs there. But and then one of the other issues that we see with credit unions is that's time to market. So if you remember back to the curve that I was showing you earlier, our members are demanding us or wanting us or expecting us to be at the very top of that curve, and they want that now. They're not going to wait for us to figure it out. They want to be able to receive that exact same experience that they receive elsewhere, but they want it today. So that's been a big challenge with credit unions as well, is that if you start from scratch and build this, you're looking at a multi-year, multi-million-dollar journey, and that's just to get your data integrated. And then you have to do report writing, you have to do predictive modeling, all of that stuff on top of it. So we don't have that time. That's not a luxury that we have to wait. We have to respond to competitive threats and do it very quickly. And then one last thing to call out is that we see this as an industry problem, and that's why I was talking a lot about collaboration at the beginning of this and how we're really excited about CUlytics and their whole collaborative environment. Is that this is an industry problem and an industry opportunity. It's not something that one credit union is going to be able to go out and figure out because there's so many moving pieces. And just alone, I've been at OnApproach for about 5 years now. We've seen so many different changes within that 5-year time frame and had to reposition what we do to adjust to the new changing times. That in and of itself is a big challenge, and having one credit union try to figure out that and stay up on the new technologies and new ways of doing things would be incredibly challenging. So that's why we think it's something the industry needs to really work together on figuring out. So that brings us to what our solution actually is. So what you're seeing on the screen here is a graphical representation of our product. And on the left-hand side, you'll see the disparate data sources that were familiar from the last slide. But basically, every credit union struggles with that. You have all your different data sources scattered throughout the credit union. Very hard to make sense of them. So what we do is we actually take all that data and we integrate that around a single record. So whether that's a member record, a branch record, an employee record, whatever you're really looking at, there's only going to be one of them. So for example, John Doe member might be one of your best members. He might show up 10 different times in the credit union, but in M360, our solution, he'll show up one time. But what you will have is every single behavior or every single transaction surrounded around that member. So you start to get this 360 holistic view of what's going on. And again, that's not just for your members, it's for your branches, it's for your employees, it's for the credit union, as a whole. You start to get this holistic 360 view of what's going on. And things that are around that member are things like, do they have direct deposit with us? Do they have ACH? If so, where's that money going to? Where's it coming from? Do they have a credit card, debit card with us? Okay, how much do they spend? Where do they shop? What merchants do they frequent? How does that spending increasing versus decreasing in comparison to how their income is increasing or decreasing? Other things would be, do they have loans with you? If so, if they ever miss the payment, all of that stuff factors into the different behaviors, the different transactions that mean something from an analytical perspective. So basically what I just described to you guys is a data warehouse. At its core, that's a data warehouse. But what OnApproach realizes is that a data warehouse is not going to get credit unions to the very top of that curve that I showed you earlier. Not at least a standalone solution that works just for an individual credit union. And we've seen that a lot in the past where credit unions have not, they've tried it and it hasn't really worked, or it hasn't really met their full standards or their whole requirements they've been trying to get to, because it's so difficult, time intensive, employee intensive, and so forth. So what we wanted to do to change the dynamic of what's going on in the credit union space from a data analytics perspective, is instead of giving a credit union a data model that works specifically for them and only works for their systems, like a Scimitar and a Meridian Link, we wanted to develop a data platform, something that's been standardized across the entire industry. So when I install it at one credit union, it doesn't matter what source systems they have, their data in M360 is going to look the exact same as every single one of our clients. So really creating this ecosystem, or this interconnective platform. And the analogy I always use is, think about the Apple iPhone. Your operating system, your iOS, is essentially a platform. And everybody that has an iPhone has the same platform. So we all have the same opportunities to access the exact same things. I can download the same app that any other iPhone user can download. Well, we wanted to take that same approach and bring it into the credit union space. But if you're all on your own individual standalone data models, we can't do that. But with a standard, it's really quite easy. So with that, our standard data model enables what we call the ecosystem, which you're seeing on the right-hand side. And one of the big components of that, and this is really where the collaboration comes into play, is the ability to share what we call applications. So an application could be a predictive model, it could be a report, it could be a dashboard, whatever it might be. Once it gets developed off our platform, since it's using the same common standard data definitions, it can be plugged in at any credit union that's on our platform almost immediately. So you don't have to wait around. You can actually basically install it and be up and running within a matter of minutes sometimes. So that's really one exciting piece. We just launched a website that has all that stuff on there. It's called cuappstore.com, and you can kind of see what's up there right now. We expect that list to start growing, almost exponentially as we add more product partners, as we add more clients that continue to develop stuff on our platform, and also as OnApproach starts to roll stuff out. We just rolled out a few predictive models that come pre-built with our product, and that's something that you guys get access to immediately. But then the other big benefit of our product, which is also derived from collaboration, is the ability to pool data together. So basically creating data pools or data lakes. And again, this comes back to the standard. It's very hard for two credit unions to combine their data together if they both have built unique data warehousing or data models that are specific to their credit union. Because again, you're going to struggle with different data definitions and different ways of defining things. But since we have all of our clients on the same platform, the same data standard, it's very easy for us to combine data from all of our clients into one spot. And also combine data from some of our partners out there. So we just got a strategic investment from Allied Solutions. That's one of the players that is interested in working with the data lake to make this data lake very, very powerful. So the reason we're doing that, one of the biggest reasons we're doing that is from a predictive analytics standpoint. So the ability to actually do predictive modeling, because what you'll find out is that a credit union doesn't have a whole lot of data in terms of all of the other institutions in the world. We're still small credit unions at the end of the day. So when we go to do predictive analytics, we're always going to struggle with that. The inability to get high confidence levels from our results, because the more data you have, the more confident you become. So if you're running a predictive model off a small set of data, you can't say with confidence that model is right. So If you can't say, yes, I really strongly believe in this, then you might as well not even be doing that predictive modeling, because it's basically like flipping a coin or just going with your gut. You're probably better off doing it that way. So that's one big benefit, is that we have this massive set of data. The other big benefit is that you now go from having each credit union is responsible for getting a data scientist and hiring a data scientist, which is in some cases a $200,000 employee. Instead of each credit union having that responsibility, you now share that burden and also that cost, but also the benefit with the rest of the industry. So we have a couple data scientists working off the data pool or data lake, in providing predictive modeling for all credit unions at once, versus the opposite way, which is having to have a resource go independently to each credit union and run those same exact models. So you can start to see where that benefit comes into play. There's speed, speed to market that we get benefits from, but also cost. Not having to hire a data scientist or having to contract with one independently, we can share that with the rest of the credit unions. And then the other thing that we're really excited about, we haven't fully rolled it out yet. It's more in POC stages right now, but we're aiming to get credit unions to more close to near real-time peer-to-peer analysis. So being able to do benchmarking at a daily level versus what we're doing today, which is a 4 or 5 month delayed level. So basically what you do is you wait for the 5300 call report. That's every quarter. The NCUA takes some time to produce it and publish it, and then 4 or 5, 6 months later, you have that data to analyze. Well, doing peer-to-peer analysis, the point of that is to make changes to stay competitive and stay up the times with what else is going on in the industry. If you're making those decisions 6 months later, it's probably not going to benefit you as it would from a daily perspective. So that's one of the things that, like I said, we're very excited about, that, being able to actually bring that to a daily level, being able to do that. Because our solution collects all the data daily, and we can pull it together so you can actually start to analyze it at that level. So that's really our product in kind of a nutshell. And just to kind of summarize quickly, basically what we do is we summarize all the data, or integrate all of the data into one common single source of truth. Traditional data warehousing at its core. But then we realized, again, was a data warehouse is only going to get a credit union so far. There's still a big, long journey on top of just the data piece that requires a lot of different resources, a lot of different time. So that's why we kind of said, the traditional data warehousing route has kind of failed this industry. We needed to do something new and develop something different. And that's really where the platform concept came up. If we can get all credit unions on one common standard platform, we can do some really cool things around collaboration, sharing predictive models, sharing dashboards, sharing reports, but also pooling and sharing data for greater insights. And just as this kind of the whole concept of it, just so you can visualize it, this on the left-hand side, you have the business capabilities that you achieve, and on the bottom is the time. So you can see the things that I was talking about. The top one is more the CU analytics, or the CU collaborative analytics journey that we were just talking about, where you start to get these business capabilities very, very quick, because we're working together. We're combining resources with the industry and also sharing that cost burden. So the timing is a lot less of an issue, plus we get more out of it, less time, more stuff out of it. Whereas the custom journey, you're really having to work with only the staff that you have on time. You can only handle one project at a time because you have a limited amount of staff. So you can kind of see why we realize that there needs to be a different way of doing things. We can either have all credit unions stick on this do-it-yourself model and spend years upon years only getting a little way up the curve, or we can come together and realize that this is an industry opportunity, and we need to work together so that we can start to compete with some of the other institutions out there, like the big banks that have $100 million budgets, like I talked about earlier. And just to give you guys some examples, just so you can walk away and know some of the real stuff that we've actually accomplished for our credit union. So we've actually been in the credit union space now for almost 10 years. Our first client joined us in 2009, and we've seen a lot of great success for it. So one of the examples is Ideal Credit Union. So Ideal Credit Union basically wanted to look at their members' profitability down to the individual level, and actually know how much money does each member generate us, from a profit perspective. And what they realized early on is that we can't do that analysis with a traditional MCIS system or anything else like that, because it doesn't look at transactions. It looks at product level data. So when you're looking at product level data, you're missing a big picture, because I could have the same 3 products of another member of similar demographics, but I could be one of the top users of my products. I'm swiping my card every day. It's in my Netflix account. It's in my Amazon account. I love the credit union, where that other member that has the same 3 products as me, he might have thrown away his debit card because he doesn't care about it. He was never going to use it to begin with. You guys just got him to sign up for it one day. So looking at products doesn't tell you anything about what's going on from a profitability perspective. It's what products they have and how they use them, how they transact with you. So we actually ended up building up a program that looked at about 150 different criteria, things like credit card swipes, checks written, the different types of products they have and how they're paying for them. So do they miss a payment on their mortgage ever? Have they missed an auto loan? So all of those different criteria come together, and Ideal now can actually see down to the penny how much each member makes for them or loses in some cases. And the end outcome of that was they actually built a program to reward their members for being profitable. They call it the VIP Member Rewards Program. And they've actually been able to pay out their members anywhere from $5 to over $1,000 per member based off these special dividends, because they know exactly what that member has generated for them. So the member that they paid over $1,000 for, they knew confidently that that member made them far, far more than $1,000 in that given year. So they felt comfortable doing that. And the end output of that was there was 2 really exciting outcomes of it. One was their member satisfaction, member engagement went up. Because members liked being a part of this inner circle, for one. They liked getting and achieving the VIP status, but they also grew that membership group by 15%. So that was a tremendous increase to their top and bottom line, because their credit union, like most other credit unions in the U.S., have a membership group of about 10% of their members, 15% of their members, that generates about 80 to 90% of their net income. So to be able to grow that group by 15%, that's pretty impactful. So that was one really good example that we've had, and they've actually been doing that program for, I think, 4 years now. I think they're on their 4th year. So they've been having a tremendous amount of success with that every single year going forward. And then another quick example to share with you is our community credit union. Our community credit union wanted to look at their shared branching activity, and actually analyze it. So before our solution, they weren't able to really look at what was going on, at least not easily from a branch perspective. This happens to be a shared branching perspective. So they wanted to ask the question of, does this make sense? Should we be doing shared branching? Is it providing a service for our members, or is it just really a big cost center that's not really providing that much benefit to our member group? And what they realized was kind of the latter. It was not really that beneficial. So what they did they did something that was really cool. They made a decision to minimize hours or shut those branches down. But what they did is they knew exactly what members went to that branch and how they'd be affected. So they were very proactive about it. So instead of just slapping a sign on the door saying we're closed indefinitely, they were very proactive and said to their members, hey, this is going to happen. It's going to impact you, but we want to let you know that we care about you, and we want to teach you guys or educate you on how to use things like remote deposit capture, ATM deposits, things that will still get you by without the branch. So that was really exciting, because their members, obviously they lost their primary branch, and our community knew who those members were. They lost that branch, but they also felt that love from our community, and they were able to still transact. So they weren't terribly upset. They were actually very appreciative. And then from a nominal perspective, they estimate today that they save about $8,000 per month, so nearly $100,000 per year, just off that one decision that they made. And that gets me really excited, because that pays for our solution a couple times over just in that one analysis they did. And they've done several other things too. They have a few other examples. And then one other one too is Affinity Plus. So Affinity Plus is one of our first clients. They've had a lot of success with us. But one of the campaigns that they've done in the past was they wanted to go after and recapture different loans that they knew were elsewhere. So it's very easy in our solution to see the ACH data of who's paying off a different financial product at a different financial institution. So who's got an auto loan at Wells Fargo, or who has a checking account at Wells Fargo, that type of analysis. So this one happens to be around auto loans. So what they were able to do is actually take that list and go after those members and they recaptured $9.1 million in loans in a matter of about 6 months. But the thing that was even more exciting about it was that they were able to use M360 to really get a full picture of what was going on at the credit union and full picture of that member and decide, does it make sense? You know, because a loan is not always it's not always a good thing, especially if it doesn't fit with that member profile or if they haven't been a good member or they're disengaged. So they looked at all of that data, and the end outcome of that was not only did they recapture 9.1 million in loans, but they actually increased their net interest margin on this campaign to the highest of any other campaign they've ever done. So they had done recapture campaigns in the past where they've bought in the data, but with M360, they're actually able to combine it with all the rest of the data and make a better decision on what we should be doing. And then just to talk a little bit about predictive analytics, we just rolled out a couple predictive models that are something that our clients can start to use day one, which is what we're very excited about. Because if you remember back to the curve that I showed you earlier, predictive analytics was one away from the top. So that journey used to be a very long journey for credit unions. Getting your data figured out, getting through reporting, and then finally getting into predictive analytics after you go through forecasting. Well, now with our solution, you basically can install our product and be doing predictive analytics immediately. So that's really exciting. And a couple of things that we have going on are member engagement score. So, how engaged are your members? That's going to tell your marketing team a lot about how we interact with that member. So from an engagement perspective, we know that this member is very disengaged, or conversely, we know that they're very engaged. So we treat those members differently. We want to get the disengaged ones engaged. We want to get the engaged ones, advocating for us. Help them be an influencer. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do with that. And then another one that ties in with that is the member attrition model. So basically, what members are likely to leave, and the way we look at that is how they've been transacting. So basically their behaviors in the past tell us different things. So basically they used to have 20 credit card swipes in a month. Now they have 5, and now they have 0. So they're obviously trending down. They're very disengaged, and they're likely to leave. We can start to make some decisions around that. How do we go after them? Do we spend extra marketing dollars to keep that member? And I always say this is the most credit union way of thinking about things, but maybe it's a member that we don't actually want to keep, because if you think back to the VIP example that I just talked about with Ideal, they know exactly what members are profitable and what aren't. So if you have one that's not profitable and very disengaged, well, maybe we want to let them go, but maybe we want to create a plan to ease them out nicely so they don't leave upset with us. They leave still feeling cared about, but also it wasn't a member that we really wanted to keep to begin with. And then the last one that we just recently rolled out is the cross-sell opportunities, or better known as next best product analysis. So being able to look at all of the different behaviors and how your membership group has moved. So member A has gone from a checking account to a CD to an auto loan. So everybody that looks like a member A is likely going to take that similar path. So that's basically what that model is. And I know a lot of people are excited about that. A lot of marketing teams are really want that, because really that's what you're trying to do. Is when I market to someone, I want to give them the most relevant offer, so that they act on it, and also so we don't annoy them and don't opt out of our emails. So that's exactly what that next best product model does. Is it allows us to give them a more precise recommendation and allow us to serve our members better too, because that's what credit unions really pride themselves on, service. Well, if we know that they're going to be going through an auto loan, go through the auto loan buying or the auto buying process, we can help them through that journey. Hey, I know that you guys are looking at it. Hope you go with us for financing. But if you don't, we still want to help you out. We still want to be there for you. And a couple other examples. This is actually one of the examples from our client, one of our clients, and this is a predictive model too. But basically what they realized was that from a loan perspective in today's interest rate market, it's very hard to make money off loans. Everybody's competing for the same tiers, that 740 to 760 tier. And really, we're not generating a whole lot of money. You're looking at 60 to 100 basis points. So what they wanted to do is basically look at the data and kind of challenge the FICO score and say, is the FICO score actually treating these members from the right risk perspective? And what they realized is that no, it's actually not, at least not in their credit union environment. They were actually having a lot of members that were being called more risky than they were based off of all of the different analysis they did. So they looked at past charge-offs and delinquencies and all of that stuff and tied that in with what was happening today. So what they were able to do with that data is go after those lower tiers. So go after the 580s to 640s. And as a result of that, they were able to increase their margins on their loans significantly, by having that level of confidence in saying that, we know FICO score is a little bit broken, but with all these other different attributes, we are willing to take a risk on this 580 because of these reasons. So they're a 580, they're a risk, but because we looked at everything that was going on in their life, we've deemed them less risky than what the FICO score has said. So that allowed them to book a ton of loans at a lot higher rate, and it also gave their members the opportunity to get a loan they never would have gotten before in the past. So maybe they added some new members because of that. And they actually, were on participation selling these loans, and they got auditors and regulators that kind of challenged them on it. But they were able to prove to them that, hey, we're actually factoring a lot of risk factors, even more so than what the FICO score does. And they were actually able to prove to them by back testing the models that we're actually a little bit more accurate than FICO has been in the past. So they signed off and they let them continue, going down this route. And this is why they kind of brought up the whole challenge of the FICO score. Was if you think about this, this curve right, or this chart right here, it's basically the different FICO score tiers or quadrants. And if you look at this is from 2003 to 2014. Nothing happened. The average really maintained the same. Every single different one of the quartiles remained the same. Well, what happened within this time frame? The worst economic crisis, one of the worst economic financial crises that we've had since the Great Depression. You're telling me that doesn't impact people's likelihood to pay off their loans? Well, that's what FICO score says, and that's because FICO kind of resets itself. It's more of a backward-looking indicator. When something bad happens, it kind of resets itself and just starts playing the course again. So when you're going into a recession, they're basically saying times are good. Loan to people, do a lot of loans to people. When times are bad, they're saying, whoa, stay away from lending for a bit. We're trying to stay away from that. But it should be the exact opposite. When you're going into a recession, you should be very weary that times have been really good. They're probably going to be really bad. And when we're coming out of a recession, times are probably going to get better. So that was kind of the whole reason why they decided to challenge that. And then these are a couple other examples. These aren't from our clients, so just to be clear on that, but there are some cool ones that I wanted to share with you just to kind of share the power of data. But this is basically correlating creditworthiness with shopping patterns. So basically, this is a filing research paper, and what they were able to do is actually look at the different correlations between different merchants. So I know a member that shops at Starbucks, for example. Those are usually my 800 members. So if we see a member that's a 580 and they have very similar shopping patterns to an 800, we might be willing to take an extra risk on them. Obviously, it's one of very many criteria you want to put into factor, but it gives you an idea. There's different things to look at. Whereas there might be someone that has, a different aspect where they look very creditworthy, but they don't seem to be looking very creditworthy from their shopping patterns today. And obviously, you have to take that with a grain of salt because it could be a 580 is going to Starbucks every day and they have no money to go to Starbucks, and that's why they are a 580 because they're really bad at spending. But you also have to look at it as that full picture. What's their spending patterns? What's their saving history been looking like? Has it been going up? Things like that will be combined into that. But that's a really cool example of something that you would never really think about from a lending perspective, but it actually adds a lot of value, being able to just look at that and then look at the rest of the data as a whole to say maybe we are willing to take a risk on this person that just got out of college and they never really had a credit card, or they missed a couple payments in college because they were young and dumb, and they ended up being a 580 and they're trying to get their first home mortgage. And then the last one I want to share that's kind of related to this one here is we don't have the data of the actual SKU, the actual things that the people bought, but I think it was Filene. It might have been a different research institute. They did a similar analysis here based off of where they shop, but instead it was what they spend their money on. So looking at different products and how those compare. So for example, someone that buys motor oil, the premium stuff, very expensive motor oil, they are probably more creditworthy because they care about their car. they don't want you to repo that, so they're not going to default on it. Or if someone's buying the crappiest, cheapest motor oil they can possibly get their hands on, well, they probably don't care about that vehicle. So if times get tough, maybe they're the one that's willing to just, leave the keys in it and walk away from it. So those are some of those things that you can look at too. Again, we don't have that level of detailed data, but it's just another example of things that you really wouldn't think about being brought into the lending process. But when you start to look at data in a different light, you start to realize why that makes sense. Why you can start to use that. So just to close out, basically, I talked a lot about disruption today, and that started. So when I'm talking about this isn't something I'm asking you to prepare for 5 years from now. I'm asking you to saying that this is happening now. It's time to reinvent right now and think about what's next. We strongly believe that this is not an individual credit union challenge or opportunity. We think that this is a big industry challenge, but also a big industry opportunity. It shouldn't be viewed as a project. Analytics is not a project. It's not an IT initiative. It's a strategic move into digital transformation. It should be something that's on the strategic plan, something that your CEO, your CFO, everybody's talking about from the top bottom. Like I said, we strongly believe that collaboration is the key to this. There's a lot of things that have to happen to make us very successful on analytics. And it's really going to be tough for one credit union. Even the largest of large credit unions are going to struggle with getting to the very top of that curve that I showed you earlier. And we do have a solution for it with the CU Analytics platform, which allows all credit unions to work on a common playing field and also work together, share resources, share the cost burden, and also get everybody up the curve very quickly so that we as an industry can compete with the big banks and the other people with $100 million budgets. So yeah. I just want to thank everybody for, allowing me to present and joining me today. I do have some of my information up here on the screen, so if you do want to get a hold of me, you certainly can. Feel free to visit our website and check out more information or go to our blog and subscribe to that. We have some great information that comes out. And then just to give CUlytics a thanks and a shout out, you have a couple weeks to sign up for their conference, so if you haven't yet, make sure you do that. And also make sure you sign up for the website so that you can start to work together as an industry, start to collaborate, because that's really what OnApproach wants. We care about this industry. We want you guys to succeed, and that's really collaboration is the way to go. So thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Austin. That was really wonderful presentation. Rightly as you mentioned, I know it's just 2 weeks out for the Credit Union Analytics Summit coming up in March, and folks having questions. I know there's a bunch of questions coming into the chat before I address. You can always ask questions even at the summit where OnApproach would be present as well. So just going to the questions right away, I got a couple of them here. Let's see. What use cases are OnApproach credit unions most interested in aggregating data around? Is there specifically anti-fraud or product targeting, or is it life stage analysis, churn or attrition? Is there any one specific model that's way more interesting than the other? Question coming from Dale.
So I think what we're talking about is more from the data lake perspective, getting everybody's data into one spot. And I would say that the biggest thing that we're really focused on there is a lot from the risk perspective. So like I mentioned, that we rolled out some marketing predictive analytics. The downfall of having a bad predictive model where you didn't have enough data to have a confidence level in the marketing perspective is that you might annoy the member a little bit. So it's not the end of the world. So if you don't have enough data, we're not gonna say don't do predictive analytics, but some of the things that are actually involving a lot of risk, whether that's on the lending portfolio, pricing loans, things of that nature, doing our own FICO score, own scoring models and things like that, that's going to require a ton of data because you have to have a very, very high confidence level in order to go out into the marketplace and say, okay, we have this data or this predictive model out, and I'm willing to lend out to a 580 that has these criteria because they look a lot better. Well, those are all built off of different behaviors, different transactions that we've seen, but we want that to be from the entire industry so we can start to get an idea of what members in the United States. And we also bring in some demographics, geographic specific things to better increase those models. But just to, that was a long answer to a short question, but the short answer is we really are interested in making every model more precise, some more than others. So I think risk is definitely an interesting one.
Right. Another question is, was checking account data used to prove income, ability to repay, and predict behaviors in order to challenge or supplement the FICO scores and lend deeper with same risk profile, basically using the income data? So is that something that's in the usage?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would be one of the many criteria that goes into it. So like when I talked about the VIP example, they're looking at 150 different criteria to look at profit or profitability at a specific member. It would be very similar from a risk score perspective. You'd be looking at a lot of different criteria, and spending versus saving would be a huge one. So we know that they have had consistent income, but their spending has been consistently increasing. So they haven't been making more, but they've been spending more. That's going to be a negative toward them. Where conversely, they've been making more and more money, and they've also been saving more and more money. Well, that should be a positive for them. So if their FICO score in that same period has done nothing, well, maybe FICO score is overlooking them a little bit because they haven't looked at, their different spending and saving patterns throughout their different life cycle.
Great. So one other question that I have is, I know looking at the predictive analytics solution that you have on the slide there, which is great, I think, from a cross-sell perspective. But do you run into a risk of maybe driving it more into a targeted audience where it's being addressed to a specific audience versus the other?
So you're saying from a predictive modeling standpoint, like selling to the credit unions, or I guess I don't understand that question fully.
Yeah, so more from the predictive analytics, or even from the output, right? I mean, how is it? How is the M360? I know it's kind of a 360 view that's being looked at. I mean, do you run into a risk of being looking at a specific segment of audience, or is there any other risk that's involved when you're looking at it?
Yeah, and I think that's a primary reason why we realize that a data warehouse at an individual credit union is probably not going to get them everywhere, because rolling out a next best product model, a probability of attrition model, a member engagement score model, those are three models that took a significant amount of time to develop. Well, those are just three things of many, many things that credit unions should be looking at. So that's why we're leveraging this collaborative analytics approach, because we don't expect one company like OnApproach or one credit union to figure that all out. So some people will be focused on the marketing piece of it. Other people will be focused on the financial general ledger piece. Other people are focused on lending and risk. So with the whole industry focusing and concentrating on different things, that's what allows the credit union industry to really gain business capabilities a lot quicker than they would have been able to if they tried to go at it on their own. So from a predictive modeling standpoint, we just started rolling out predictive models. That's why we only have those three now. But definitely our focus is going to be on expanding to different areas. Marketing is one area, but every other area is definitely going to be something we want to roll out, and that might be done by OnApproach. It might be done by one of our valued partners, product partners.
Great. So I think we're just over the top of the hour. Really great information, Austin. I think a wonderful topic about collaborative analytics and the platform that OnApproach is set up, helping the credit union overall. So thanks, everyone. I just wanted to take this moment to thank Austin, as well as all the folks who have dialed in for your questions. And do not forget to check out the website, sealytics.com. We'll be posting the recording as well as the presentation perhaps around next week. And check out all the past webinars as well on the site. It's all available there. And if you're not signed up yet for the summit coming up, March 13th to 15th, it's happening at the Microsoft campus, Redmond. Washington. That's the CEO Analytics Summit 2018. We will resume the webinar series again in April, but for the meantime, next month, we will see most of you in person there at the summit. So on behalf of the entire team of Analytics, this is Hemant Gangaram wishing you all a wonderful Thursday. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you at the summit. Thank you all.